Welcome everyone to a new video on the Solgaleo YouTube channel. Today we're starting something slightly different. We're moving into a new format. Lost Thunder is out now, so we're not testing for it anymore. Now we're testing for events in the new format. I'm here today with Blake. How's it going, Blake?
I'm going good, Mitch.
That's good, and we're going to be running through a deck list of Solgaleo Ninetales GX. We reckon this deck's probably going to be a pretty good place to start moving into the new format. So Blake, this has been a pet project of yours for quite a while now. Do you want to run us through the pros, the cons, the reasons why you're going for it, just before we get into the cards themselves?
Yeah, sure thing. But before Lost Thunder came out, I was watching a lot of Japanese-based YouTube videos, and all the content from them was like showcasing this deck, this combination, and the deck was performing super well, churning out stage 2s on turn 2 like no other deck I've seen in recent memory, and healing a lot of damage, dealing a lot of damage with not many drawbacks.
Yeah, it's pretty
and
good.
Obviously, no weakness.
It's pretty good. All of the Solgaleos have abilities that you want to have, but we'll talk about them when they come up. It just works really well, doesn't it?
Yep. Yeah. And so I thought I have to build this deck. I have to make it mine when we eventually get access to all of these cards. So as soon as we got access to scans, we proxied it up, and I built it based on a lot of the stuff I'd seen and what I wanted to put in instead and stuff like that. And I've got to where I am now.
Fantastic.
With the list.
Well, we're going to be playing with this deck all week. It's kind of the new format we're running with. We're going to show you a deck on the Monday or at the start of the week, and then we're going to play with that deck against decks that we think might be meta relevant. It's going to be a bit tough early on to figure out what those decks are, just because we haven't had any major events yet, but once we've got that sorted, that's what we're going to be looking at. So, Blake, I might leave it over to you now. You want to run us through the Pokemon in your Solgaleo Ninetales list?
Yeah, well, it should be obvious to everyone that if this is a Solgaleo Ninetales list and the focus is on Solgaleo, that you're gonna want 4 Cosmogs. It's not your preferred lead, but you need 4 of this guy to get out enough of each of your different Solgaleo GXs. We have a Cosmom to help things run along smoothly if Ninetales doesn't come down quick enough, or Solgaleo gets knocked out early and we need to evolve it, because we have a lower than what you'd expect count of rare candy for a stage 2 deck. And then we have 2 of the Ultra Road, which is one of the biggest points of this deck to help all these heavy guys get around, and also your super big hitter. It does a lot. I mean, it's not just a 250 with no weakness in combination with the other Solgaleo, but Sunsteel Strike, big attack, Ultra Road helps the deck flow, and the GX attack is your setup and pretty much all of your matchups apart from Ultra Beast Space decks. And then we have 2 of the new hotness, the new Solgaleo promo. And the new Solgaleo promo, it has got a few of the same characteristics as the old one, the 250 HP, but this one has an ability which prevents all of your Pokemon from having any weakness, which is incredible. And both of its attack for a DCE, the first attack, Turbo Strike, does 120 damage for a DCE. I'm sure you've heard that before. And it accelerates 2 basic energy to one of your Pokemon, which has incredible synergy with the other Solgaleo's Sunsteel Strike.
Yeah,
and
it's
just
unbelievable.
In case it needed anything, in case you didn't feel like Soul Bursting or using Sublimation GX against your Ultra Beast decks, then if you hate spread decks, we have Prominence GX, which just heals all of your Pokemon. So it seems fair. It's a pretty well balanced card.
Yeah, and it's not like the drawback of playing Solgaleo is its really high retreat cost or its weakness to one of the prominent types in the meta, being fire. It's not like those 2 things are completely mitigated by their abilities. Oh, but wait, they are. That's insane. Like, to have such a powerful GX that they just synergize so well with each other. They can take knockouts so quickly. It's just such a good pairing of GX Pokemon.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
you know, the hard thing with it, obviously, though, is the fact that you have to rare candy into it, and that must be really, really difficult, Blake.
Yeah, well, that's usually the case, and that's why, you know, this deck would be balanced, or it would be tier 2 if it was just this and a couple of other attackers and some Lele's and stuff. But Lost Thunder gave us an incredible tool for stage 2 decks, which is Alolan Ninetales GX. So to make sure we start with Alolan Vulpix as much as possible, and we can have access to as many Alolan Ninetales as possible, we have 3 Alolan Vulpix. This is about as much as the count can get without being ridiculous. 4 seems to be too many. If I cut it down to 2, I'd be worried about prizing them and stuff. So I think 3 is the magic number here for the deck, as much as you'd like to lead it all the time. But Cosmog only has 1 retreat, Tapu Lele only has 1 retreat, and those are the only other basics in the deck. So there's not too much to worry about in terms of being able to beacon on the second turn of the game. And of course, we have the Magic Man, the Alolan Ninetales GX. This is what brings everything together. This card is incredible. It's the best card in the set, without a shadow of a doubt in my mind. And its ability, when you evolve it from Alolan Vulpix, you may search your deck for 2 item cards and put them into your hand. And you might be thinking, what item cards would you get? Well, in this deck, obviously, you grab 2 rare candies after you beacon on the second turn.
Which is that's a busted combination. That's ridiculous that you could do that.
So if your opponent doesn't play Judge or Marshadow, which, whilst a lot of decks do, there are many that don't. So if you are able to get off a beacon into one of each of the Solgaleos, and your beacon sticks and your Vulpix lives, one of them, you can bench 2, and only one of them has to live to evolve. You get 2 stage 2s go on the second turn, which is incredible, and they're super powerful.
Yep,
and one can attack straight away off one attachment.
They can both do really good attacks. Like even if you go in with the first Solgaleo, the original one from Sun and Moon, you're just gonna attach 5 energy from your deck. That also seems fine.
And Alolan Ninetales isn't just limited to rare candies, as you'd obviously see in the deck. As we get through to the trainers, I'll explain just how good Alolan Ninetales is as we get to those. But to round out the Pokemon line, we have 2 Tapu Lele GX to help us find supporters and consistency and trouble spots to make sure we start out with Elm if we need it, or if we get the Elm at the start, going first with this deck when you can't beacon can be a bit troublesome to make the deck flow properly. So we run a copy of Olivia, which makes the deck it's an incredible one-off.
That's nuts.
In
just
this deck.
Even like you wouldn't normally play Olivia, but if you can just play that Olivia down at the right time, that turns into 2 rare candy, or it turns into by getting a Ninetales and something else, or it turns into 2 Solgaleos.
Yep,
which is madness.
That's just where it goes nuts. But yeah, that's where the Tapu Lele sit in this deck. Now the supporter line is a bit different as we move on from the Pokemon. So Cynthia is obviously the mainstay of the format as far as supporters are concerned. It's just the best consistency tool we have at the moment, even after Lost Thunder has come out. But for this deck, because shuffling over useless resources can be a bit much and can leave you wanting in the later stages of the game, we only play 3 copies of Cynthia, because we have a bunch of new tools and access to different types of supporters to help us draw cards. And so with that being said, we have 3 copies of the new supporter from Lost Thunder in Sightseer. Now what Sightseer does for this deck, as well as add consistency, it allows you to bin basic energy cards for your new Solgaleo promo to accelerate to your other Pokemon, which is just like another layer of the deck, is that it can accelerate energy really quickly. And because the deck also runs healing cards like Max Potion, which discards your energy as the price of healing your Pokemon all the way back to brand new, having access to acceleration is amazing.
It's really good, yeah.
Yeah. Also, to get all these basics out, we play 3 Professor Elm's Lecture. If you get lucky enough to start with this, you're alright. We play just enough ball cards that we're happy even if we don't hit the Elm off the start, because we play 3 Beacon Vulpix and that helps round everything out. But in the later stages of the game, you really don't want to see this card. It doesn't really do anything for you, so I think 3 is the right number.
Because you don't want to end up at the end of the game drawing into them when you really just need an energy or a rare candy to get a new Solgaleo going or something like that.
That's exactly right.
You don't want to be picking up dead cards at the end of the game, but you still want to have it at the start.
Yeah. And the only other cards that thin from our deck are Sightseer and Ultra Ball. So if you want to get rid of them and not have them shuffled back in, you better hope it's in the hand with one of those 2 cards. So that's why I don't playing the 3. Although I have thought about the 4th, it may be a thing in the future. But at the moment, it's only 3. I like 3 at the moment. But we may see differences in lists in our videos going forward. Because each person has different preferences.
Yeah, we've got different people playing. So we're playing the same archetype, but everyone's gonna have built the list slightly differently. So you never know. Maybe someone plays 4, maybe someone plays 2, maybe someone doesn't play them at all. Maybe they've got their own spin on things. But this is just a general starting point. If you wanted to build the list, this is probably a really good place to start. Like Blake's been looking at this for a long time.
This is exactly what I will be playing throughout the whole week, with no changes until we review at the end of the week. So we move on from there and we go to 3 Guzmas. In a deck that one-shots, you want to make sure that, especially when it's a heavy cost, that you're one-shotting the things you want to. So I think 3 is the right number. It's not a super aggressive deck because it can play control if it wants to with healing cards and the acceleration and retreating for free. So
since you've got since you've got the Ultra Road Solgaleo, your Guzma is now a Lysander instead. You don't need to worry about where you need to be.
And we don't really have to worry about racing a lot of decks, except for some of the more aggressive stage 1s, like maybe a Lost March type deck. We also play 1 copy of Judge, because Hand Disruption can just win games outright in this format still, even with the new consistency staples that we got. So once if you're going first, you get all your Solgaleos out off your Ninetales. You can just judge them on your second turn. You're already good to go, but their second turn turns into nothing, and that's how strong it is. But it's not great at any other point in the game, other than maybe just before they're about to win the game. So we only play 1 because it's very situational for us in this deck. And as we talked about earlier, the deck plays 1 Olivia, which helps the going first in this deck when you can't beacon.
And even just picking it up late game, it can turn into a Ninetales, which turns into one of the items that we're about to go over, which are all pretty useful.
Yeah, that's right. So obviously, like, nothing new here. Every deck plays it for Ultra Ball. It's silly if you're not, unless you're playing a deck which has like 7 different ways to get Pokemon, like some grass decks and psychic decks do. Now that the new stuff's come out, we play a less than average count for a stage 2 deck, I would say, and we play 3 rare candies. Because we target our rare candies with Alolan Ninetales, we don't really need to draw into them as much. So the third one can be prized, and it's okay. Because really, when they're 250 HP and they've got no weakness, they're not going down quickly, so chaining them isn't really necessary. So you can get away with 3. Maybe if it becomes more of a problem against some of the other decks in the format, I would consider a 4th, but at the moment 3 seems good. And here's one of the more interesting cards that I think powers up the deck a lot. Makes it a little bit more ridiculous with the Alolan Ninetales, and is also a further explanation for why we don't play 4 Guzma, and that's 3 of the new Custom Catcher. Now this is a new card, much like Puzzle of Time, where it has a secondary effect if you play 2 of them, and another if you play just the Singleton. Now if you play 2 copies of Custom Catcher at once, you can bring any of your opponent's Pokemon into the active, which is outstanding.
That's pretty good.
And you must be thinking, man, it's going to be hard to get 2 custom catches into your hand at the same time without the help of Zorok, and usually you'd be right, but this new card over here is really crazy. And once you've evolved all your
searches for 2 items, right?
And what are you going to do once you've run out of rare candies and stage 2s to evolve into? I think I might just kill any one of my opponent's bench Pokemon that I want.
Yeah, I reckon that seems pretty good.
The other thing, which I think a lot of people haven't noticed when reviewing this card, is the top part of this card is actually pretty damn good. And if you play it once, unlike Puzzle of Time, which I had a pretty meh top effect, you could rearrange the top 3. This card allows you just to draw up to 3. Sometimes this card can let you draw 3 cards for no particular reason. One question I could understand getting is, why don't you play 4 copies of this card if it's so good? That's because we only run 2 Alolan Ninetales, so this combo usually only goes off once, and the 3rd copy is just to ensure that if we prize one, we can still have it go off in the early stages of the game where we haven't taken any prizes yet.
And the best thing about it, unlike Puzzle of Time, you can play 3 custom catcher and not have the 3rd copy be wasted, because you can still use that first effect. Whereas if you played 3 Puzzle of Time, that's just stupid, because the first effect isn't worth playing on its own.
Exactly. You're never super disappointed to have played Custom Catcher for its top effect. It has actually done something still.
Exactly. And it's moved your board state forward, which is the key.
So we move on to the next point here, and this is what really hammers the point home with this deck. The only problem is the deck list is super tight, and I've only been able to fit 2 of them, but we played 2 Max Potion. If 250 is hard to hit, if you think 250 is hard to hit, you're right, especially when you don't have weakness. So if they have to hit for 200 and something, and then you just go, oh, that was a really nice effort. It would be a shameful if it disappeared, and bam, Max Potion.
Then it does.
Alolan Ninetales searches this out too. Fantastic. Awesome. I'll play more. I just gotta find a spot for it. It's probably the one card I'm trying to fit in first if I get a 61st card in my deck.
Max plot.
Yeah. And so next we have some recovery for the deck. This is one of the cards I'd consider cutting if it was to fit a 3rd Max Potion. That's 2 Rescue Stretch. This is mostly the fear of the aggressive decks in the formats. The Menace in Buzzwole can put a lot of early pressure on this deck. If you've watched some of our earlier content, you've seen this, where the early pressure from Buzzwole has just taken out a lot of basics, put a lot of damage out, and the deck couldn't recover properly. And 2 Rescue Stretcher really helps to make sure that you've got Alolan Vulpixes down, Cosmogs down, any resources you might have binned, like an Alolan Ninetales, you had to discard early to draw extra cards because there was a lot of pressure. It's really good, and if an Alolan Ninetales dies and there's another Vulpix out, being able to Rescue Stretcher to grab 2 items from your deck is pretty good. So for right now, 2 is my count. I would consider changing it.
Yeah, well, I could see that going down to 1, but...
Yeah. But yeah, that's where we're at this stage. Now, the deck does 230 at its cap, which is an incredible number, but as funny as it seems, it's not enough sometimes. So, in case we come up against a matchup where 230 isn't enough, maybe a Decidueye, maybe another Solgaleo, we play 2 Choice Band to get ourselves over the line. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing really more to say. It's a math fixer. 3 would be too many. 1 would be not enough, even with the help of Alolan Ninetales. Because if it's prized in the matchup where you need it, you're not going to be able to take the knockout. You need to unprize it and get use out of it. So we really only need the 2.
Yeah, and you definitely need to play something like that in a meta where you're not sure what you're going to go up against. Because you could come up against Sceptile in a tournament and just not be able to kill it, and that would suck to have this amazing GX that just cannot.
That's a good
do
point.
250.
Sceptile is another new high HP menace from Lost Thunder that might plague this deck. It's a matchup we haven't tried yet, so that would be.
Yeah, it might be worth looking at, but it's one of those cards where at first glance you're like, why would you play Choice Band? But there are so many decks going around where that extra 20 damage is so significant, and you just can't afford, really.
Exactly.
You can't afford to miss it. So Choice Band is a pretty good inclusion.
A lot of you might be saying, why 2 Choice Bands? Why didn't you just play Delmwise? And I have considered playing a copy of Delmwise, and it's probably the card that's tied with the 3rd Max Potion for being in the deck next. So
hang on.
I might.
Sorry, Blake. I'm just going to stop you there. Just forget the Sceptile stuff because it's got 230 HP. I'm an idiot. But that's okay. So it doesn't matter. Just kill them. Just kill those.
We'll just kill those guys. Don't worry about that.
Cool.
That means we can use this next card that I'm about to talk about, which is a perfect segue. Sometimes there are decks that can do 250 damage without weakness, as stupid as that seems, like a Cosmo. And a lot of the times they need the help of the card we just mentioned, Choice Bands. And if you're up against one of these decks and you can still get one shot, a lot of the deck loses meaning. So we play 2 copies of Lysander Labs so that we disable those pesky Choice Bands, and against other Psychic decks we disable those pesky Spell Tags which just came out, which also helps fix math against us. Another thing to add would be that Shrine is very good against this deck, so replacement stadiums are much better. I used to play a Field Blower instead of the 2nd Lysander Labs place, but with the advent of the new powerful Prism Star stadiums, Field Blower really wasn't cutting it anymore as the solution to that problem. And Lysander Labs sort of does both in one. It can replace the Prism Star stadiums that are just super powerful for the decks they work in, like Heat Factory and Thunder Mountain, and even Life Forest, as bad as that card I think is on its own. It's fantastic in Sceptile. So being able to bump those stadiums is a must. So having 2 copies of your stadium, especially when it's not searchable, it's about the only thing in this deck that I can think of that isn't searchable via Alolan Ninetales. Playing more copies is best.
And especially when playing down that stadium can keep your Solgaleos alive, it's super critical. Because so many decks do not plan on ever doing 250, and if they do, they're only ever doing it because they've got a Choice Band on.
Especially decks like Lost March. Lost March usually caps around like 220 to 240 because they work with even numbers, and not a lot of the variants are running Shrine yet, or have thought to fit in space for Field Blowers, because the original lists are always going to be greedy and not worry about what the meta is like, because no one knows what it is.
Yep, so you may as well be greedy.
Yep, so you may as well be greedy, and Lysander Labs is a stadium which punishes such decks without the counterplay to them. I would say Lost March is definitely the one that comes to mind the most, because Boswell and Lycanroc can still take one-shots without Choice Bands because they have Diancie, which is annoying. And now that I think about it, it might call for if that deck is this deck's worst matchup, and it's too hard to win with their ability to one-shot, I would consider playing a Wobbuffet from this set, which is really good because it shuts off the abilities and makes it so all Prism Star Pokemon can't attack or have any abilities. And that's just a bench sitter. There's plenty of bench space in this deck, because really you only need 3 Pokemon out. Yeah.
Sit there and stop that Diancie from doing the extra 20. The Choice Band's not doing the extra 30. Suddenly 250 is really hard to hit.
Yep, Absorption hits 240, so close but so far. And if you play around it, Dangerous Rogue will stop at 200. So, yeah, that's
definitely
basically what Lysander
card
Labs is.
A card that is worth consideration, but Lysander Labs is so good.
Yep, it's come in clutch in a couple of the sets I've played outside of the testing realm on our YouTube channel, but and I didn't actually draw into it in the set that we had featured, where it would have been really good, hilariously enough.
But hey, it is what it is, right?
And back then, I only played the one copy, which is another reason why I bumped it up.
Yeah, fair enough.
So as we finish talking about that, we move on to the easiest part. But I suppose it is tricky in a sense in this deck, the energy counts. This deck is mostly metal attackers, but the Solgaleo GX attacks off a DCE, so there's that to consider too. Alolan Ninetales GX attack is fantastic against Ultra Beasts, but requires a Fairy Energy, so there's that to consider. It also does 70-30 Snipe for its first attack, which is also fantastic, especially when you have access to Soul Burst in your deck, which means you don't have to play a high count of energy to be able to fish them out. And with all of that reasoning in mind, we come to this final count of energy. So we play 6 Metal Energy. It might seem low, but you need only 2 Metal Energy to declare Sunsteel Strike along with a Colorless Energy. And the other Solgaleo GX accelerates them back onto it. So yeah, the 6 seems to be the right count. You really need that first Metal Energy to activate Soul Burst, which is why it's 6 and not 5. We've had other teammates test with 5 and have struggled with metal attachments, and I tend to agree that it's because just 5 isn't high enough.
You're just missing that card, yeah.
6 seems to be the right number at the moment. Next we play 4 copies of Double Colorless Energy. This used to be 3. But in matchups where I was attacking with abusing Solgaleo, the new Solgaleo GX, to accelerate energy, I found that when I was trying to heal myself, getting the next DCE attachment was difficult with only 3 of them. So I decided to up it to 4, and hopefully this makes the promo Solgaleo more prominent, easier for it to attack earlier on, more consistently, and also enables Tapu Lele to do more than just fish out a supporter.
And it's not like the DCE is a dead card as well. If you desperately need to do it, every one of your attackers has a colorless cost. So,
yep.
Like if you have to, then just whack it on to do a Sunsteel Strike or whatever.
Literally every Pokemon in the deck can use the double colorless energy in some fashion.
Yeah.
The Cosmog can draw a card with it. Cosmom can teleport with it. Alolan Vulpix can use Powder Snow for 50 with choice bands and 100 on Blacephalon with weakness, which is pretty funny if you've already got the Pokemon you want in hand. So yeah, and it can be a second attachment on any of the other Pokemon to make it work.
So it's not like that. It's not like that 4th DCE is ever going to punish you.
No. Unless it would have been better served as one of the other cards that we talked about earlier, like the Delmise or the 3rd Max Potion.
Yeah.
But right now, I think it's pretty good to have a 4 count. The last energy we have, as we talked about earlier with the Ninetales, we need Fairy Energy to activate it. But we have access to Soul Burst GX, so I'm not really worried about playing a low count, so I play 2 copies of Fairy Energy, so that we have access to all of the good parts of Alolan Ninetales, because every part of that card is amazing. The only part of that card that isn't amazing is the fact that it has 2 retreat costs, but in this deck it doesn't matter because you have access to Ultra Road.
Yeah. So
it eradicates the worst part of the best card from this set, and amplifies the best cards of other sets. So the deck is a recipe for amazing gameplay.
And in a vacuum, based on all of the decks we've looked at, if we were to just look at all the lists in a vacuum, I would say this is probably one of, if not the best list that we've had a look at, which is why we're going for it first. It looks like it could very easily be one of the best decks going around, and I would be very surprised if people don't play it as Lost Thunder becomes legal. It's exceptional.
And to me, a personal bias aside, I think it's the card with the highest ceiling of how much the deck can do with tech attackers, tech Pokemon like the Wobbuffet and the Delmise, energy counts. Like I said earlier, you have access to Soul Burst, so putting in other colored energy and other tech attackers to suit the meta is fine, because you're not worried about its weakness. You're only worried about what damage it can output. So really, for me, the sky's the limit with this deck, and it's all about refining the lists, which is what this week is all about.
For sure. So that's a really good segue, Blake. This week we're going to be playing Solgaleo Ninetales in every single one of our matches that we play. We're going to be playing it. Multiple different people are going to be playing it. I know I'm playing it for a bit. Blake's going to play a game, and there's going to be some other people from the Sableye team playing as well. This week we're going to feature 4 of the decks that we think are probably going to be the best 4 going into the new format. We're going to play against Alolan GX. We think that deck is really, really interesting, if not good. I'm not sure exactly where we stand on it at the moment. There are some people that are a bit 50-50, but it seems
I believe
pretty...
Blacephalon is the real deal, and it's also one of the decks I worry about most when considering this deck.
Well, it's one of the few decks that can naturally do 250, right?
It's 5 energy, and it has access to Beast Ring, so doing 5 energy multiple turns in a row isn't out of the question. It's not hard.
Yeah, so it's definitely one of the cards that's going to be coming up, and it's one of the only cards out of the new set that really immediately justifies its own deck. So we're going to have a look at that one. That's going to be coming up pretty soon. We're also going to go up against Zorak Lycanroc with some of the new stuff that the new set enables that deck to do, which is going to be a really interesting matchup as well. We'll see how that goes. Obviously,
lots of new tools for Zorak Lycanroc, so I'll be interested to see how it fares.
Obviously, the Lysander Labs is going to be a big problem, but we'll see if we can overcome it. We're also going to play it off against Giratina Malamar, which is one of the best one-prize attacker lists that's coming out of this set. Spread, as Blake mentioned before, can sometimes create a bit of a problem for this deck, and so Giratina obviously is a spread deck that is going to be interesting to see. And we're also going to play it off against Lost March. We're not sure how Lost March is feeling at the moment. Again, like Blacephalon, there's some people who think that it's the real deal, some people who think that it's average. We've been talking a lot about it being average, but we looked back the other day and saw that Lost March has actually won all but one of its sets that we've played on the channel. So figure that one out. So we'll go through, we'll play that one as well, and we'll see how we go. Oh, sorry, Blake, you go.
Oh, I was just going to add that Lost March is another one of those decks, like this one, which has an amazing amount of potential, but my problem with it is that its baseline is lower than a lot of the other decks. So a bad list will be horrible, but a good list might be the best deck in the format.
100%.
It's got an understandable amount of hype because it had March in the name, and everyone remembers Night March if they played through it. It was a terror, it was a one-prize terror, and it was super powerful. It carried me through 2015 Worlds there and at the tournament, and it's obvious why one-prize attackers that take one-shots early as turn 2 is ridiculous.
Yeah,
and so
for sure.
A deck that looks comparable in almost every way about the core, gameplay of the deck. It must be as good as Night March.
Yeah,
Night March was the best deck in the format at its peak. Why can't Lost March be the best deck in the format? Well, we'll find out as we go through and test these matchups, because
for sure,
it's new, terrifying.
100%. And so at the end of the week, what we're going to do is we're going to get all the people together that have played, and there's going to be 6 or 7 of us over the week that have played, and we're just going to run through all the stuff that we've talked about with this list and more. What changes could we make? What tech attackers and tech items could we put in? If you were going to play this in a tournament, what would you expect to see? That kind of stuff. So look forward to that coming up this weekend. And yeah, hopefully you enjoy the format that we've got built up at the moment. Let us know how you feel about it. Comments would be really greatly appreciated, because we love to talk to people and figure out more stuff about the Pokemon trading card game. It's what we're all about. It's what we're here for. So please let us know what you think. Thanks very much,
Blake. We're trying to figure out what appeals to you guys the most.
Yeah,
so
100%.
Definitely let us know what you guys like to see. We've got access to PTCGO now that's fully bulked up with the new cards, so we can build just about anything you guys want to see and play that and record it as well, no problems. So yeah, just let us know what you want to see from the channel.
100%. As I was saying, thanks Blake for showing that list off. Hopefully we can see some success this week, and hopefully when you take it to League on Saturday or Sunday, you can go 3-4-0, however many rounds you've got, and just take home those tasty little prize packs.
I would like to have something to brag about when we come back to discuss this deck later on in the week. Hopefully it doesn't bomb on me for whatever reason.
doesn't just flub up, and then that would be really embarrassing if it just loses every single one of the games.
I'm quite proud of this list. It has a lot of pieces from everything that I've seen so far, and a lot of my own flavour in here. So I would like to see this deck do well going forward as well, because it's an amazing deck to play. It's so much fun getting out big stage 2s and hitting stuff hard.
And just hitting stuff hard, taking big knockouts. That's what it's all about.
Yep.
Good stuff. So, thanks very much for watching, guys. We'll obviously stick around this week and see more Solgaleo Ninetales. Apart from that, thanks very much, Blake. We'll catch everyone next time on the Sableyes YouTube channel. See you next time. Goodbye.